Hello, everyone. This is Christian from NetGuru, and welcome on our fourth AI for Dev sessions. So, as usual, I have Patrick Szczygło with me from our R&D department. Hello,
Hello.
Patrick.
Welcome.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you
So,
too.
so today we have quite a controversial, let's say, topic or subject around will or can GPT and replace you or replace your job. And I remember that actually GPT engineer is something that we've kind of already discussed, tackled in some previous sessions, or at least mentioned about. So, what we will discuss today from your perspective?
Yes. So previously we discussed a little bit about agents that were
Mhm.
able to create programs, create documentation, tests. And today we'll cover GPT Engineer, which is kind of an agent and is pre-configured. So you run just one command and everything is working. So we will see, will it replace us in our job? How it generates code, how it can work with existing code base, and yeah, is it worth even trying?
Okay. So what we know for now is that GPT Engineer is actually a tool, right? That can automate some, let's say they call it certain aspects of software engineering tasks, right? So maybe before we will deep dive in that, can you maybe explain how it's different from more generic LLM tools like ChatGPT, for instance? What is the difference between GPT Engineer and ChatGPT purely?
Yeah, sure. So in ChatGPT, you ask a question, you get an answer, then you revise it. So you ask another question, ask to do something, and so on. In GPT Engineer, it's different. You just give it a task, and it thinks, it decides what needs to be created, how to write files. It's able to create files on your system, and then it's asking you, should I run this code?
Mhm.
So it's doing everything for you. So it's not only about, like conversation, like in
Mhm.
ChatGPT, but this is conversation between GPT engineer and system and like agents. So everything is doing on its own,
Mhm.
creates files, everything. So you just get proper output, I would say, proper program, anything
Yeah.
you want, to be honest.
So this is more autonomous, let's say, agent software that can execute the tasks around software engineering or software development on its own, rather than only having this being a chatbot that will rather advise something and give you a piece of code. All right, cool. So how to start? How to start with it? How to set it up? Where can I get it?
Yeah, sure. So we just go to GitHub,
Hmm.
we type GPT engineer, and we get to their web page. There is really simple setup instruction
Hmm.
because it's just one line, just install GPT engineer with Python, and it should work. And
Hmm.
after that, we can simply jump just right into it. You just create like some, mm, you just give it API key, your API key for OpenAI, for example, but you can use any other model.
Hmm.
And they have documentation how to support it. So I was testing it with like GPT 4.0, that is the
Hmm.
newest one. I was testing it with some open source projects. So I just created Llama CPP
Hmm.
setup, and Llama CPP allows you to run any open source model on your machine directly. And having it on your machine is pretty slow, but it works. It works not so good like GPT-4o
Hmm.
for obvious reasons. It's GPT-4o is much bigger, much better, but is better in benchmarks and everywhere.
Hmm.
But open source models sometimes are specialized. For example, there is like Llama code, DeepSeek code, as I remember. So you can try those. I was trying with DeepSeek, and it was working pretty good. But it's stuck in the loop. So this is one thing that you need to be cautious with agents in general, not only with GPT Engineer, but sometimes they can stuck in the loop. So try to create files, generate code and everything forever,
Yeah.
because they've got into something, like
Yeah.
admiration circle, like last time with agents.
So I also checked the documentation of, what local models can you use, because as you mentioned, probably out of the box, if you want only to test the solution, it would be good to use just OpenAI API, and it will be probably the fastest way to use it. But I saw under documentation that actually there allows, as you mentioned, for the local Llama CPP, and there are some models like Code Llama, right, or Mixtral that can be even used 70 billions or 7 billions, like smaller. So definitely very flexible or versatile solution in utilizing those. All right, so we have. So you mentioned we need to, of course, use the GitHub account to set it up. So what's next? Like, you know, what we can
Yeah.
do next?
So when we set it up, we can start working with it. So maybe I will screen share. I will share my screen.
Sure thing.
Yeah. Here I have like this GPT Engineer setup from local code. So I just copied everything from GitHub and created my own version here. Basically, I set up our .env file with API key. And here we have some folders. And one of those is projects. Projects is with some examples. They have simple example. I may just copy it. They have example with improving existing code. This is really interesting because you don't have to like generate everything from scratch. You can use existing code, like your project, some open source, and try to fix some issues there automatically with GPT Engineer. And they have some example with vision, so you can like, for example, make some design, create something on paper, put it here, and it will try to recreate. For example, here is like UX diagram. We have simple sidebar with 4 buttons, right? And it will try to create it.
Okay, so this is quite amazing because this is like image recognition to code, actually, right? So
Yes.
it can recognize some mockup, as you have here, like super simple static web page mockup, and then it can be at least tried to be transformed to code.
Exactly. Then we can use those improve functions. So we start with it, and with improve function, we can ask about adding some other buttons, adding some colors, adding some content, or anything.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I created here like test one. I couldn't figure a better name. And all you need is to create a file called prompt. This file prompt will contain your prompt. So basically what you want from GPT Engineer to do. And I created already before our live stream a simple prompt. We are creating simple backend application in Node.js. I picked Node.js because I'm familiar with it, and it will provide following endpoints: get, post, update, delete. So simple CRUD application, and we will get like available rooms for example, booking application. So we can simply imagine you have, I don't know, a flat to rent and you want to create your own booking system. So you can easily like create, is the room available, add new rooms if you, for example, buy another flat or something, update the rooms and delete, of course. So we'll start with this. And to start with, it's really simple. We just pick like GPT-E. So this is our like code. I'm using Azure, but in most cases you don't even need it. And then you specify where is this file called prompt. In my case, it's just projects test because it's in projects folder test one. So let's press enter, and it will start generating something, I hope. So it's using prompt file prompt with my text. And it's warming up. And hopefully it will work.
Yeah, probably we need to wait always a couple of
Yeah, something is
minutes or
warming up,
seconds.
but as you can see here in the
Mm-hmm.
file tree, there is a new folder called .gpt engineering, and
Okay.
it created the folder memory, so something is happening. So
Okay.
let's see. If it's not working, I will just restart it. Sometimes it's, get
Yeah, of
stuck
course.
probably.
Of course.
So let me restart. Yes. And as you can see, it started. Let me
Mm-hmm.
just, this is our message. And then
Mm-hmm.
it started, great, let's start by outlining the core components.
Mm-hmm.
So he decided about server, controllers, routes, models, services, and so on. And then he's trying to create necessary files, and step by step is
So
coding
so
everything.
so actually we can see how in fact this solution interacts with GPT model, right? So it's kind of prompting itself, probably in some very specific way, to build the entire structure, right?
Exactly. So it just writes everything, asks questions to themselves, and we'll see. And as you can see, it's already created the code.
Mm-hmm.
And do you want to execute this code so we can always run it? Here we have simple script that is showing what will happen. Let me press no. And then do we want to store our prompts? No for now. So no worries. And it shows us the cost. So the cost is around 4 cents to generate it. And as you can see right now on the left side, we have a lot of files here. So it created like the run sh. So if we take a look at the file, just make it this smaller. Here we have simple instruction how to use it. So we just install and start application. We have some server.js, so we can see that it creates API with rooms, and it uses room routes from routes. So let's go there. Here we have something about routes. So we have get, post, put, delete, everything what we asked, and it's using some room controller. So let's go to controllers. Controllers is using some room service, as you can see, to add new rooms to data, update rooms, delete rooms, and everything. And it returns everything with JSON. That's perfect. So let's take a look at this service. So let's go to the services here. And here we have just simple, like adding, getting rooms and everything that is using room data. And let's go to the data to see it. So we have some rooms just in pure table, right? It's not the best. We would like probably some database. So we'll try to ask GPT engineer to add it for us. And here we have the code to add new rooms, update rooms, delete rooms, and everything. And at the end, we have this package JSON that is with all the scripts that we need to start development, with some dependencies to install and everything. So we've got complete application, I would say, because we have clear structure with 4 different folders. We have example how to run it. We have initial place like server.js. And if we take a look at our prompt, we have get, post, update, delete, everything what we wanted, right?
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, it's really simple. So it doesn't have any database, persisting
Yeah.
storage, it doesn't use Docker and everything. So we can simply just delete this prompt as we already have what we wanted, and we can ask add SQL database for rooms.
So it was actually my next question that I wanted to
Yeah,
ask was around, okay, so how we can now modify it or make it more complex, right? And you answered that this is only again changing the prompt in your folders, and that's it.
exactly. So you have this prompt file, and this is your main entry point. This is the place where you start the work, when you continue the work, and you are able to modify anything, to be honest. And then you have full access to the code, so you can modify it by yourself or ask just GPT engineer. And if you want to ask GPT-Engineer to work with it, there is one catch for it. You need to add this -i symbol. That means improve. So it's not like creating from scratch, but it will use some existing files. And if we press enter, and as you can see, it loaded us with different screen, and it's asking us to select some files, because GPT-Engineer can only read selected files, including irrelevant files will degrade performance, cost addition, and so on. So what we want to do is to just specify what we want GPT-Engineer to see during the improvement. So for sure, we want the GPT-Engineer to see SQL room data, because we want to add SQLite, which is like local database. So let's give him access to our data, to our room routes, so he knows we'll have like get, put, update, delete room service, because it's some wrapper and controller. And maybe package JSON, because he probably will add some dependencies. And let's say that's all. So now we need to write the file. So Control O in this case, we press enter and we press exit. And when we exit, it starts generation. And let me just scroll down. Here is like the summary, what we selected, those files. And then he's trying to integrate SQLite into the application for room management. He figured out already the context, because as you can see, we just say it's for rooms. So he figured out it's for room management, and he will make following changes. So he decided on 4 steps, and it's generating. Let's go here. And right now, as you can see, it's asking us, do we want to apply these changes? So let's review maybe them quickly to see the complexity of it. So you can see he went to some file in controller, and he added something, like change the code here and here. So he added some like error messages with 500 status. Let's go further. He created new file, data.db.js, right? With our SQLite, he create that is creating like new table with rooms and everything, and exports database. That's great. Also, what is great, it's not like dump creation. It just creates tables if not existing. So it's not overriding anything. So that's cool. Then he removed our old table with rooms that was hard-coded in the code and it wasn't persisting, and he added like database. And then from this place we can like see he created like all the selects with forget rooms instead of simply returning our like old table and everything. So let's apply those changes. And it costed us like 9 cents to create that. And as you can see in room controller, for example, we have this new code. In the data, we should have new file like db.js, and it's already here with room db. In the package, there is like new SQLite. Oh, and what is interesting, here we have an error. I'm not sure, can you see it? But for example, here it's missing like the
comma.
Not the dot, comma. Yeah, exactly, comma.
Yeah.
Because I haven't specified that package JSON is for GPT to read, and he was trying to modify. So he modified it properly because he added like this dependency, but he didn't have access to the whole file. So he just added like new line instead of modifying like the previous one. So this is what I could give him, like this package JSON to also modify. And probably run sh, write, and server is also modified. So he ensured that database will initialize. So that's perfect. Even if I didn't specify this file server.js, he was able to add some code here to just make sure it works, basically.
Amazing.
Yes. So this is the basics of
Mm-hmm.
how to use GPT Engineer. And GPT Engineer is really powerful when we start from scratch. We want to create new code, new services, and POCs, MVPs, simple ones. I was
Mm-hmm.
testing it on our open source project, Sticky Parallax Header,
Mm-hmm.
on our NetGuru GitHub account, and it was not working so great because this library is much more complex. It has a lot of files, and as you saw there, you need to specify the files you want to modify. So you already need to be familiar with the code base if you want to work with GPT Engineer. Because
Yeah.
if you go to the new repository, it's totally empty. It's easy to start. But
Mm-hmm.
if there is a lot of files, first you need to know where are the parts you want to modify, because you have to specify them for GPT Engineer. So
So
familiarity
so you
with
need
code
to
base
know.
is must have.
Yeah, so you need to know to be familiar with the project structure actually, right? To
Exactly.
work on that. All right, cool. So you mentioned that the way how I read it, actually, this is like we say quite often that tools like ChatGPT are very useful in this blank page or white page syndrome. Like you want to start somewhere, but you don't know where to start actually, and it can help you in creating this structure, right? So I see this like very strong uh, here, like it's very like similar, right? So you want to create something and start somewhere, then to modify it on your own, right?
Exactly. I think that's the best scenario because, for example, as we were testing it with Sticky Header, I had to know how to work with the code, and then the code was complex. So you have a lot of places that are touching other places. For example, server is touching room routes. Room routes are touching, where are they? Are touching another, like controllers. Controllers are touching room service. Room service is touching probably room data. Exactly, room data. Room
Mm-hmm.
data are touching DB, and you have the whole loop and of dependencies, and you need to know what files to modify. But also GPT Engineer sometimes, in general, AI sometimes has the tendency to not following with all of those graph relations, let's say, because it's getting pretty complex. And on top of that, sometimes you have some complex code. For example, Sticky Parallax Header is the library, the visual library. So you
Mm-hmm.
have this header that you can like drop down, and it's
Yeah.
making bigger with the photos, new text is appearing, and so on. So it's pretty complex in case of the visuals. And this is like new function of GPT working with some visual components and so on. So sometimes it cannot understand what you want from it.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be hard to force GPT in general, GPT AI, to create something with pretty good visuals there.
Yeah, I see. Okay, very interesting. um so is there anything more from this solution that we can present still?
We could try example vision, but I've never tested it.
Mm-hmm.
And we could run like this example vision project. So let me just clear this and let's try it. Example vision. It might not work because we have like custom setup for it, but I'm also curious. And
Yeah.
I think we have like the most important question at the end. Will GPT Engineer replace you in the job, right?
Yeah, that's totally something, to wrap up the discussion. I see
Exactly.
that.
Yeah, it's already generated. Let's press no, no, no. And let's see what it generated. So it generated some styles, some
Mm-hmm.
templates with some base template. Let me just take a look at that. And no, it's probably not working, or maybe. Let me see the image. Home, about us, services, contact. And let's see this file. Home about release. Yeah, so it's kinds of working. It created the navbar that we wanted. It
Yeah.
already added some content, which was where we haven't asked it to add,
Yeah.
like welcome to homepage and everything, but it added, and it just renders the templates. So this base HTML. So let's say it works, but as you can see, it's not perfect because it's added something from themselves. So will GPT
Yeah.
engineer replace you in the job? That's the most important question. As you can see, probably not, because you need someone to
Yeah.
specify the files, write what to do, how to modify the things and everything. And I'm not expecting that if you give even Jira tickets automatically to GPT engineer to work on some code base, it will be able to follow up with all of the changes. Because if we ask, for example, to create simple navigation and it adds additional content on top of that, it's not like meeting the business requirements. So we will always need someone to supervise it. Also,
Yeah.
we need someone that will be able to follow with all the changes and be able to check them. Because, for example, here we just missed one comma, and this comma will make this application not working because you
Yeah.
cannot install dependencies, you cannot run because you have broken package.json file. So this simple comma will broke everything, and you need someone familiar that this comma is necessary here. It's kind of meme that you miss one comma and nothing is working, but
Yeah.
in this case, as you can see, it's true.
Yeah. So, what you're saying at the end of the day is that actually you need to still supervise it, right? Which can be a time-consuming process, at least for now. Probably, and even I don't know, maybe sometimes, um, let's say, verifying it might be a more time-consuming process than creating even the code itself and probably some simpler projects, right? So at least definitely you need to have some software engineering understanding to work with that, right? So it cannot like replace any software engineer one to one, I would say, but probably can be very handy way to start with the project, right? Or maybe for someone that is trying to learn software development basics, right? In a little bit more complex project than simple hello world, right? That can be very useful.
It's a great place to kick off like this conversation because it helps for beginners for sure. Because beginners sometimes cannot create like proper structure, MVC model. Like here we have, for example, these controllers, data routes, everything is separated, beautiful, and GPT is doing it like already. And there are also like two types of people: ones that like to write something, and some people that like to read. It's the same
Yeah.
like with the books. We have a
Yeah.
lot of people liking to read everything, and there are some writers creating the books. And here it might be similar state that some engineers like to write code and some like to make code review. So
Yeah.
if you have like really good code reviewer, he will be faster probably than developer using GPT engineer because he can, like generates code really fast. As you can see, we
Yeah.
haven't waited any. I couldn't finish conversation and it was already like done. So you can use like this code reviewer to just check the code and make sure everything is working and it's fine. So in theory, you could set up like another GPT engineer, another agent that will do code review and make this like crazy loop of reviewing and working with GPT engineer. But as it sounds crazy, it might work in some cases. In case they didn't end up stuck in the loop.
Mm-hmm.
And some people who like to write, so probably they will create like such application, maybe not as fast because it was seconds, but they will create like really good quality code faster probably than we can end up with it with GPT engineer without a good code reviewer. So we
Mm-hmm.
have two types of people that like to write, and they will probably be faster than GPT engineer, and code
Yeah.
reviewers that GPT engineer is probably a way to go.
Yeah. Probably what I can tell you from my end, because I've been using GPT for code development let's say a lot. Of course, there were like quite simple projects, building some APIs, those kind of things, backend applications, conversational agents, mostly in Python. So what I can tell you, so from my perspective, and probably it will be the same case here, and this is for any, let's say, AI for software development, is that at the end of the day, this code is again quite random, right? So it's quite difficult to keep it like optimize on the same way, right? So you never know what you will receive as an output, and to what, probably in more complex projects, to what extent it will be optimized, right? But it's much better than GPT, purely like coding with chat GPT, because you may have more holistic view on the project, more holistic, um, let's say, interaction with the project, rather than only a piece of code somewhere, right? So
Exactly.
like,
Here it is integrated in, for example, VS Code. Even if it's not directly integrated, it lives in the repository. You have this
mhm,
prompt, you can modify them, ask the question, create. In some cases, it might be also super useful when you are writing code, and then, for example, ask GPT Engineer to create tests for your code to speed up things. GitHub Copilot has already such use cases that you write the code and GPT will write for you the tests, and you don't need to copy paste everything, check the chat, ask for some additions or anything. Here you just use the prompt. You can save the prompt uh, as a template for you, and you
mhm,
can like reuse it. For
yeah,
example, in NetGuru, we are creating some useful prompts that we can reuse later in the project to create some graphs, for example, for some documentation, testing, and everything. So
yeah,
if you end up with really good quality prompt, you will get really good quality
yeah.
output.
So I guess that the case here is what you said on the very beginning, that this is very useful tool for quick prototyping. It might be, let's say, from my perspective, be more traditional alternative to low code development or no code development to some extent, where you can at least start to interact with some prototype, right? But you still have more control over the code if you know what is happening inside. But it lets you to start faster, right? To build something faster that can be very simple. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
and for sure, like, I don't know, you tell me, but this image to code looks quite amazing. We saw that right now probably it has a massive, limitations, but in a year for now, who knows, right? Maybe for front end development might be quite interesting.
Exactly. We'll see. I mean, GPT Engineer is really good tool for engineers to have it in your pocket. So
Yeah,
anytime you can pick it up, make proper prompt and execute every what you need on your code base. Because sometimes we make some refactors, sometimes we make some test documentation diagrams, sometimes we want to extract some knowledge. So it's really good starting point if you
yeah.
wanted
And
to do
this is,
so.
I believe, a perfect finish of the conversation, because you perfectly wrap it up. So thank you very much, Patrick. It was super interesting to see this amazing tool in action into potential use cases. We all are aware that this is still, baby phase, right, of those tools. So we will see what will happen in next couple of months or even years. I'm sure that those tools will be much more mature than today. So I don't know, who knows, maybe we'll need to ask the same question again in a year from now and see, where it goes. Maybe we should try something like that, to meet again and see how it's going. So yeah, thank you very much. Super interesting as always, and see you on our next session, which will be around um, creating visual novels with
Exactly.
AI models. And the session is scheduled. Let me check that for, I'm not sure yet when, but I guess 1 or 2 weeks from now. So make sure stay updated with our events on NetGuru LinkedIn, and see you there. Thank you very much, Patrick.
Thank you, Christian. Bye-bye.